literally the most difficult thing is I think
So
you're
are
gonna
we
have
really going to
to.
be doing this? Alright, folks. This is a random motherfucking debate. So I'm going to undeafen myself, and so everyone now can hear me. Everyone who is in the live stream chat in Discord needs to be muted. And stay motherfucking muted until I unmute you. So each person, that being Styzor and Socka count, will remain muted until it is their turn to speak. Each person will be given 5 minutes. If you can't hear me, that means you need to listen harder. That also means I'm leaning back in my chair because I think this shit is funny. All right, so you can barely hear me. Let me actually double check something real quick. On a serious note, you don't need to really hear me anyway because I'm not going to be really talking that much. But whatever, because Styzor offered the debate. Let me turn myself. There we go. I'm going to let Styzor go first. He is going to get a whole 5 minutes to say whatever the hell he wants to say on this topic. And then I will let him know when he has 1 minute left, 30 seconds, and then he needs to shut the fuck up. Same thing for Socka count. So, on that note, Styzor, please unmute.
Okay, right. I think I'm unmuted right now. Can I just say thank you for Dragno for hosting the debate or conversation, whatever F you want to call it. I want to thank Socka Count for engaging in this debate. Okay, so as far as I'm aware, we're talking about solipsism, and if I can definitively, or at least correctly say, it's a non-starting point in that regards. My position is that solipsism is a belief, therefore it has nothing to do with a position of truism. I don't know if that's the case in regards to what we're supposed to be debating, but that's my interpretation of this debate. If Mr. Socka wants to engage differently in how I just described the debate, I'm more than welcome to go on a different path. I don't need 5 minutes, but I'm going to definitely destroy solipsism as a concept or as a belief system. So I will hand it over to Mr. Socka Count.
All right, let me stop the clock. Reset. All right, please mute Styzor. All right, Socka Count, let me know when you are ready, and I will start the clock.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. Yeah, I'm ready. Just the topic of the discussion is there a solution to hard solipsism? Now Styzor in his very brief introduction didn't actually present any type of solution to hard solipsism. In fact, it looks like he doesn't really even understand the concept enough to even engage in this topic. It's not really a hard problem, just understanding the concept of solipsism. Even if we can put out some of the different views of solipsism here as well. Did he really go after whichever one he wants? But for the sake of this discussion, it was just about the philosophical solipsism. It was about whether or not we can know for certain, or just express any type of certainty, in the existence of other minds. Now, this is actually like a deep philosophical problem, and now no serious philosopher, would really probably espouse this position that they are the only mind, or that no other minds existed. But it is an interesting problem because there is no known solution towards it. And why even Styzor would even want to take up on a debate topic that is unwinnable is beyond me. But I can tell by his opening speech that he really doesn't know how he's going to argue. Maybe he's just waiting for the response at this point in time. I don't know. But the idea behind solipsism is that it starts off with this basic idea that when it comes to knowing things, that what separates something from being like a mere belief and knowledge is going to be some form of justification. All knowledge, for example, to make a knowledge claim about something, is going to be predicated on a prior piece of knowledge, an antecedent piece of knowledge. And this is going to lead you into three, unsatisfactory positions that's expressed through something called the Munchausen trilemma. One, either the knowledge just built on top of each other and goes on ad infinitum, which is usually like infinitism, that it terminates with a proper basic belief, or that it could be partially, possibly justified in some type of circular argument. Now, all these are unsatisfactory answers, but when it comes to something like solipsism, we're going to take a look at this just from like the foundationalist view. Is that there's no antecedent knowledge that could justify that other minds exist. It has to be taken as an assumption. It has to be taken as a proper basic belief. Now, like I said, no philosopher out there is going to espouse that no other minds exist. It's really, really hard to live your life doing this. You interact with people and you assume that they are there. But at the end of the day, that's what it is. It is an assumption. If you wanted to try to validate something like the existence of other minds, well, how would you do it? How would you justify it? How would you raise it to a level of justification that doesn't just reduce down to the saying, other minds exist because other minds exist? How would you be able to justify that other minds exist without having to appeal to other minds? I know other minds exist because I can talk to people. Well, that's the problem. The problem is that you're first assuming that these other minds exist to begin with. And when you have to assume that other minds exist to get to the conclusion that other minds exist, you're really just begging the question. So the problem with solipsism is that, not that it's I would say, necessarily a reasonable position to hold, or one that a lot of people would put forward, that just because we can't have the certainty doesn't mean that we therefore shouldn't assume other minds exist. It just basically puts out that when you're taking a look at certain philosophical questions that we have to start with, there are three things that we express a lot of certainty in. That first off, that we know the contents of our own mind better than anything external of it. That there's no conceptual or necessary link between the physical and the mental brain, and that experiences of a person are necessary to that person. Now, those are things that we can be certain of, but nothing of that requires the existence of an external world. Nothing out there requires that other minds exist. So, pretty much what the problem with solipsism is that we get to a certain point where, if we want to know anything about the external world, we have to start with that assumption.
All right, I'm stopping here, but about 10 seconds to spare. Resetting the clock. Socka, please mute. Styzor, are you ready?
Yep.
And go.
Thank you. Okay, so the problem I have with this whole entire argument is the assumption argument. We assume, right? And this is a bit weird. So we assume gravity exists. We assume it to be the case. Yep, subjectivity requires you to require somebody else to tell you this is the case. So in regards to what you're saying is, I know you made this point about other people, but therefore other people would be external to your existence, right? So if you exist on your own and you're saying that this position that you hold requires other people's input, then the other people's input would require literally other people. And this is the strange thing about your position that I don't understand. You're saying that in order for you to hold a position that requires you to say there's no such thing as knowledge, requires no knowledge, but the knowledge that you gain from a perception, or at least the questions in linguistic terms, requires you to do what? Nothing? I don't understand in any way how you can defend solipsism as a rational position, because solipsism itself requires you to exist, for one, which requires external, let me make this very clear, input in order for you to make that call judgment. So if you're saying, I don't know if other minds exist, then one, how would you know a mind exists? Because you require another person to say there's a mind which is external from you. I mean, it's basically it's like you can listen to Noam Chomsky or anybody who studies linguistics. In order for you to ask a question requires an answer. The very fact that you hold a position of this nature requires you to literally gather knowledge, which you rightly correctly said. But the knowledge that came from your external input requires other minds. So in order for you to actually hold that position requires other minds, unless you made them up. Now we can go to a point where is everybody in the universe or planet Earth, just gonna make it very clear, is everybody on planet Earth in a matrix of sorts where nobody exists other than other people that you dreamt about? But how would you dream about other people who are external if they don't exist? Even if you can claim they don't exist, it would require an external input into your brain. Therefore, you can make a judgment call. This is the problem I have with solipsism. And you haven't made a good call for why this is the case yet. I'll hand it back over to you.
All right, let me reset the clock. Please mute. Soccer count, are you ready?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep. All right, go.
Okay, so he started off by saying that, things is like, oh, we have to assume gravity, but, we have this intersubjective analysis that we can do with other people, and therefore, we can verify it. Well, hold on a second. Again, the assuming gravity, you can experience gravity on your own. You actually don't need other minds in order for you to perceive gravity. They're not a required component of that. So why he's trying to draw comparisons to making assumptions about certain scientific theories, I don't know. It just doesn't really follow from that. When we're talking about just whether or not other minds exist or not. This is a lot different than solipsism. Solipsism, you can't go out and just, experience it beyond that mind-body barrier. Okay, you don't have direct access to that, and while you might be able to perceive that other minds do exist, you don't know if they do. He brought up the example of the Matrix, but imagine a Matrix with just one person plugged into it, or that every single person that you encounter within that Matrix is just a part of your subconscious, that you're not fully aware of. These ideas don't actually disprove solipsism, because he still hasn't addressed the main point, which is that how would you validate the existence of other minds without first assuming that other minds exist? Now, I mean, this isn't a big problem, for in epistemology. Okay, like I said, nobody would seriously walk around. He also said that this is my position. It's not. It's not my position that that I'm a solipsist, that I believe that I am the only mind that exists out there. But I do recognize that there is this hard problem of solipsism that I just couldn't know that other minds exist, and that's what the point of this discussion is. Styzor has said that he has a solution to hard solipsism, that he doesn't have to hold it as a mere assumption. But when you push him on it and you try to say, hey, well, what is your solution? And he says, well, because I need that intersubjective analysis for other things. Well, that's fine. If you really need an intersubjective analysis for gravity, then I guess go for it. I don't see how you would. But the intersubjective analysis you couldn't even use to validate the existence of other minds. Like I said before, the argument would be that, in order for you to show that, hard solipsism wasn't a problem, you'd be able to demonstrate that other minds exist without having to plead to other minds. Styzor has not done this. His goal in this debate is real simple. Make an argument for other minds that doesn't include having to appeal to other minds. Now you've noticed that he didn't have this in his introduction. His first rebuttal to me didn't contain this. Really, when it comes to the entire topic of this debate, it would be real simple. I can prove that other minds exist because X. And X, all it has to do is contain an explanation that doesn't appeal to other minds. I don't think we've gone that yet. And I don't think we're going to get that at the end.
All right, you done?
Yeah.
All right. Go ahead and unmute Styzor. Let me know when you're ready.
Ready.
All right, go.
Okay, I never said this was your position. You
Did Styzor's mic just cut out? Styzor. Styzor. Can anybody else? Let's see.
Requires a mind, and that's the funny bit about solipsism, which I think you're not engaging in this discussion. I wouldn't call it a debate, but in this discussion, if you are a brain in a vat, the entire theory that you're a brain in the vat came from somebody else. You didn't make that shit up by yourself, pardon my French. So the entire notion of you're a brain in a vat was given to you by somebody else. It requires an external brain in order to you to come up with the idea that you're a brain in a vat. Do you get my fucking point? You can't just say, I'm a brain in a vat, therefore I don't know knowledge. That makes no sense. In order for you to start somewhere requires a starting point, an X. I know people love to hear me say axiom, but whatever. So you're saying that Xbox, as an example, decided, well, I can't prove that I don't exist, so therefore my existence is therefore a truism, when it's not. It's a belief. Just like religious people have a belief in Jesus or Muhammad. It's a starting point. In order for you to get there, requires external input. If you was literally an X as a starting point, you wouldn't know anything. It requires external input for your brain to work. That's why you ask questions. That's the basis of linguistics. Pointing out the obvious is not my fucking job. It should be your job to point out the obvious also. Now I'm done.
All right, let me stop, reset. Go ahead and mute Styzor. Socka, let me know when you're ready.
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right, go.
So you notice that, again, the only thing that Styzor needed to do was make an argument. Remember, he's taking the affirmative position that there is no hard problem with solipsism. But yet, in his second rebuttal here, he has yet to present an actual argument. In fact, all he's presented at this point in time is a misunderstanding of what solipsism even is. He said at one point in time that solipsism requires a mind, for it to exist. Why aren't we talking about that? Well, no one's questioning that. Solipsism isn't the position that no minds exist. Solipsism is the position that maybe only your mind exists. It still appeals to a mind. Even when representing our friend Xbox, he says that, well, because he doesn't know that he exists, so therefore solipsism. Well, that's not Xbox's position. Xbox doesn't doubt whether he exists. He knows he exists. It's whether or not he can have knowledge of things outside of what is just within his own mind. That's a problem. Again, like this is just like the fundamentals of what the problem is. The problem of hard solipsism is, and Styzor isn't even representing the problem at all. And with that, again, we're not actually hearing an argument from him that I really have to offer any type of refutation towards. He assumes that, yes, if you use the matrix example, you're plugged into the matrix, well, somebody had to plug you in. Well, that's just a really simplistic kind of way of looking at solipsism. People kind of draw the kind of that idea that to illustrate how you won't be able to rely on your senses, how you won't be able to rely on what you perceive as this external reality. That's what those things are kind of addressing it all. To a certain extent, it could address solipsism, but the matrix example more has to do with the axis of reality, not just to solipsism itself. Remember, solipsism is a position that not a lot of people hold. I don't hold it, and as a philosophical solipsist. I do know people that have taken the epistemic solipsist position, but that's a little bit different. But even within this is that he still hasn't presented an argument. The closest he did to presenting an argument was saying that it was a starting point, an axiom. Well, that's the problem. That's the problem of hard solipsism. In order for you to solve hard solipsism, or not to solve, but to get around hard solipsism, the very first thing that you do is you have to assume it. You have to assume it as your starting point, that other minds do exist. I mean, if he agrees that you have to start off assuming that other minds exist, well, then he concedes his entire argument, if he wants to call it an axiom like that. So, again, without an actual argument from Styzor to how we can get around the problem of solipsism, or whether there's a solution to solipsism, I really don't have much to respond to.
Resetting. All right. Styzor, let me know when you're ready.
Ready?
And go.
I don't think it's a problem. I think that you're trying to defend a position that is indefensible. Solipsism is an idea that because you exist in a universe that isn't exactly, I don't know. Let me put this very clear. You exist and you don't know why you exist, right? This is the problem. And if we use linguistics to understand what my good friend here is trying to prescribe, let me make this very clear. Everybody assumes everything. That's the way existence works, right? The only way you get clarification of your own existence is other minds. That's called subjectivity. Just point that shit out. In order for you to be objective requires a subjective narrative, like gravity, right? Everybody accepts that gravity exists, but that's based on subjective views. Objectively, we know it's the case because you can jump up and down on planet Earth. I don't need to point out the basics, right? Being philosophical about why you exist, that's fine. I've got no argumentation about that. But pretending this is the case is broken. So yes, I can defeat hard solipsism by the very nature of its possession of the fact that they think, literally, they think that there's no other minds when yet your mind actually is doing the job. So for you to tell people like me or in this discussion that, well, you can't defeat hard solipsism. Well, solipsism itself is based on the mind of other people. And the only reason why they accept this position is the actual perception of other people who actually accept their position. That's what you actually call a question and an answer. Human beings themselves require one thing: questions and answers. In order for you to be who you are, doesn't require you to be right. It just requires validification of the fact that your question was correctly posed. That's how logic works, right? All human beings do the exact same shit. Doesn't matter whether you're right or you're wrong. The logic in your argumentation is mainly the correct way. That's how we function as humans. So if someone says to me, I require knowledge to do X or Y or Z, still relies on other people to inform other human beings of their perception of reality. That's the difference between subjectivity and objectivity. I suggest you look that up in a dictionary. Sir, your move next.
Right. Mute myself. All right, Socka. Let's reset. Let me know when to start.
Okay, yeah, I'm good to go. So the again, like I feel like this is like my third rebuttal here, and I really don't know what to respond to. No argument has been presented by Styzor at this point in time of how he can validate that other minds exist. He keeps on just trying to assert it as a brute fact. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to take this time and I'm going to, I guess, again address some of his misconceptions what solipsism is. Now, first off, he uses the term subjectivity a lot. Look it up, I believe he said. But just to help you out for further discussions, Styzor, when you're talking about evaluating propositions by appealing to other minds, you're actually looking for intersubjectivity. It's an important clarification to make. Intersubjectivity is how we can try to come to conclusions about things when we do appeal to other minds. But that doesn't get us around the problem of hard solipsism. Hard solipsism, like I said, is first off assuming that those other minds exist. And if you want to use an argument from other minds, an intersubjective argument to prove other minds exist, like I said in my opening, you have to first off assume those other minds exist. And you haven't presented an argument for why. Why you can actually get to the position that you think that hard solipsism is not a problem. Now, I agree, and I've said this the entire time, that nobody lives their life this way. We all have to start off with that that other minds do exist. But that's not what we're talking about right here. We're not talking about whether or not people have to assume it, or whether or not people believe it, or whether there's in believing that no other minds exist. What I'm saying is that if you had to come and actually analyze whether or not you can know that other minds exist, well, you're going to come up short, just like you have in this debate. And I'm done.
All right. So go ahead, mute, and let me reset the clock. Boop, and let me know when you're ready.
Yeah, sorry, my bad. That was a bit quick there. I'm ready.
Go.
Is this closings yet or not?
Not yet. No. I still want to kick your ass.
Okay.
Okay.
After this one, we're gonna do closing statements.
Okay. So you keep saying assume and all that shit, and I'm supposed to provide you some kind of weird. I don't know what you want me to provide you with. Let me just make this very clear, right? Human beings don't know how they got on planet Earth. Let me just make this very clear. The universe is 13.7 billion years old. The planet is 4.7 billion years old, right? You can think what you want. That's not the point of the discussion. You telling me it's real is the point of the discussion. If Xbox or anybody like Xbox wants to tell you they don't know that minds exist, then that requires a mind in order to formulate that question. Do you understand the principles of what I'm trying to explain here to you? You're telling me just because somebody says something, that makes it true. I know plenty of people, like, I don't know, G-Man, who says God's real, and plenty of people who say the world's flat. But is that true? Just because you believe something doesn't make it true. And in order for you to come to a conclusion, requires other minds. This is the point you're missing. For whatever you want to say next, it requires other minds to legitimize your question. Because that's how humans operate, in case you don't notice the fact. Human beings ask questions, okay? Let's put this where it is. Human beings ask questions to validate, I should say, their own perception of their own reality. Now, Xbox is free to say there's no such thing as whatever the fuck it is, right? Or he doesn't believe. That's cool, but it doesn't make it true. He relies on other people like me and you in order for him to validate his own questions. So in order for you to tell me that I can bitch slap this subject is ridiculous, because it requires you to ask other human beings, because that's the only way you're going to get the answer to your question. And let me point out another thing. Externalization is why language exists. So if you want to fuck around with me with linguistics, be my fucking guest, because I'll kick your ass.
All right, so let me stop and closing statements. Socka, take all the time you need.
Well, actually, I get one more rebuttal than closing.
Yeah, you do. That is true.
Or was that Styzor's closing statement? Styzor, was that your closing statement?
No, but I'm willing to let you make a closing statement.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, no, I'll make my rebuttal first.
Yes. Yeah. You get a rebuttal, and then Styzor will make his closing statement, and then Socka will make his closing statement.
Yeah, that's fine with me. That's fine.
Okay. Yeah. So again, I mean, I haven't heard an argument yet. That's the problem here. He still hasn't actually been able to validate his claim that hard solipsism isn't a problem. He's made appeals to using other people. The very thing that we're trying to argue for. We're trying to find out whether or not that he could make that appeal. So you having to appeal to people to do it is, again, him just showing that he doesn't actually have an argument against hard solipsism. The other thing, I feel like I pointed this out in my last rebuttal, is that he said that the problem with solipsism is that in order to assume other minds, you have to use your mind, as if that is a refutation of solipsism. No one says that no minds exist under solipsism. It's about whether other minds external to yourself exist. So the fact that a mind is perceiving other minds, doesn't invalidate the claim of solipsism, because the claim of that mind existing still is there. The question is whether or not we could validate that other minds exist. Now, I really don't have much more to say to that. because, like I said, there's really not a lot to rebuttal here.
Okay, this is funny. Go on, Dragnot. Go on, Drag. My closest statement is that I think he misunderstands the proposition of belief in. He keeps saying, I don't provide an argument. I just did, like about 20 times. He's saying, I don't provide an argument for the fact that if someone believes in a statement, just like Dragnot does with G-Man and everybody else does with religious people, you need to understand that in order for you to be in a position where you can claim inverted commas that this is a position, then you need facts, and the facts that he is claiming is that we don't know. Yes, we do. It's called subjectivity, objectivity. It's not fucking rocket science at this point. He's saying I can't make a distinction between hard solipsism, which claims that I don't know if other minds exist. That means that your mind doesn't exist, because in order for you to have a mind would require somebody else to tell you you have a mind. Are you dilatory at this point? The entire fact that he doesn't know that language works on a basis of interaction, right? Let me go deeper into this, right? Just for a second. If you're claiming that Xbox knew what a knowledge-based system was by himself, who was created by himself, then I would agree solipsism makes sense. But the fact is, it doesn't make any sense, does it? Because in order for him to claim what knowledge is, requires somebody else to tell him what knowledge is. The last time I checked, you were born fucking stupid. You learned shit in school. You learned to count to 10. You wasn't born with that shit. So please, be my guest or get under my fucking boot, bitch.
Well, all right.
Now I'm done kicking his ass.
Okay,
please
go ahead and mute. Thank you for that very vigorous closing statement. Socka count, you will be offering the last closing statement, and then we will close this out and probably go watch Skylar Fiction.
Okay. Yeah, so again, he says that the way that we can validate it is subjectivity. Well, I mean, subjectivity would only be dependent on just the mind itself that's trying to perceive these things. I think, again, what he's trying to say is that intersubjectivity, between other agents. But again, this is just begging the question. We haven't even got to the stage where he's established that these other agents exist to begin with. This is the entire point of this discussion. But yet he's yet to offer anything that resembles an argument to why he can have this intersubjective analysis to begin with. That's the point of the question. So, again, there is a problem with solipsism. There's a hard problem with solipsism. It doesn't mean that you therefore should walk around believing that no other minds exist other than your own. It just means that if you're asked to validate it in any sort of way, you'll realize that, well, most of the time you can't. I mean, how would you ever begin to evaluate something like that without first off having to assume so many things like the existence of other minds to begin with?
So you want to validate?
It's a closing statement, Styzor. Closing statement.
Facts.
So again, I think that it's been successfully demonstrated throughout this hangout. First off, that Styzor doesn't really understand the problem of hard solipsism. Doesn't have a reputation of the hard problem of solipsism, and keeps on begging the question for other minds to exist in order for him to try to even offer a defense of that. Why he's trying to relate this to beliefs, though, is an interesting thing.
Because it is one.
Simple. Oh. Okay, a belief is just any proposition about the state of affairs that we think is true. This could apply to the color of my car, what day of the week it is, or whether other minds exist. And these are all just things that believing things doesn't make it true. It's the justifications that follow from that. It's the ways that we can validate those beliefs, that we can claim that they're knowledge, or that we have knowledge of them, or that they're true. And we haven't been able to do that with Styzor's argument. How he can manage to take his belief in other minds and make it anything more than just a belief. He keeps on dancing around the language, almost invalidating his entire position when he talks about things being axiomatic, or the things that are taken at the onset of an argument. as almost like a possible assumption that, yeah, he can't defend his position. So if the point of this was that, whether or not, remember the topic of this debate was, is there a solution to hard solipsism?
Yes.
That was the topic. Is there a solution to hard solipsism?
Yes.
Well, in this entire discussion, Styzor's not presented it. He has not presented a single argument that somebody can confidently look at this and be like, oh yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. Define hard solipsism.
Oh my god.